Yeah, I think we can let them into the waiting room.
All right, admitting everyone now.
Good evening, everybody. We're just going to wait a minute or two. Thank you for your patience as members of the public gather into the Zoom room. Thank you for coming to the public scoping meeting for the Jewel Streets Neighborhood Plan. We will get started in a few moments. Okay, I see folks trickling into the meeting room. It is 4 past. I will get started at 5 past, so give it one more minute for anyone coming in. Okay, the time is now 5 past, and we could get started. Good evening. Welcome to all. Thank you for making the time to attend this evening. This is the public scoping meeting for the Jewel Streets Neighborhood Plan. I'm going to note for the record that the CEQR number for this project is 26HPD019Y. Next slide, please. I would like to note for those who would like to testify later using your phone, please take a moment now to note the instructions on the screen. These instructions will also appear later in the presentation and will be made available in the Zoom chat, which you can find access to at the bottom of your Zoom screen. We would like to encourage dial-in participants to register using the form that is available in the Zoom chat. This will allow HPD staff to contact you if your connection is lost. Please fill out that form. Next slide, please. Okay, good afternoon again. The time is now 5:06 p.m. As I mentioned prior, this is the public scoping meeting for the Jewel Streets Neighborhood Plan. My name is Anthony Howard, and I am the Director of Environmental Planning for the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development, or HPD. I am joined tonight by my HPD colleagues, Paula Torres and Rose Cady, Senior Neighborhood Planners, and Amara Hernandez, a Senior Planner at HPD. HPD is acting as the lead agency for this proposal's environmental review. Tonight, we are also joined by DEP, the Department of Environmental Protection, who is serving as an involved agency in this environmental review. Please note that tonight's meeting is being recorded so that we may accurately and fully capture all comments from the public. Next slide, please. I will now go over the agenda for this meeting. This meeting will be divided into 3 sections. First, we'll begin with a summary of the purpose of this meeting and the procedures. We will discuss the project's environmental review with particular focus on the draft scope of work for the Draft Environmental Impact Statement, or DEIS. Second, we will provide a background description of the project, including the proposed actions under the Uniform Land Use Review Procedure, or ULURP. Finally, we will invite comments on the draft scope of work from elected officials, community board representatives speaking on behalf of the community board, and then the public at large. Next slide, please. Before going over the procedures for this meeting, I would like to thank everyone present for taking the time to attend. The goal of this meeting is to provide a forum for the public to provide comments on the draft scope of work for the DEIS. I will now explain a bit more about environmental review in general. Environmental review is a process required under both New York State and city law that is typically triggered whenever a public entity exercises discretion to approve, fund, or directly undertake a particular course of action or actions. The state and city's environmental review procedures are modeled after, but are distinct from, the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, at the federal level. The environmental review process considers the potential for a proposed action to result in significant adverse impacts, and if so, identifies measures that could mitigate those impacts. The process also provides for opportunities for public review and participation, which is the subject of today's meeting. The process is intended to facilitate informed decision-making. And as part of this process, HPD, as lead agency, considered an environmental assessment statement, or EAS, prepared for the proposed project, and HPD issued a positive declaration on November 14th, 2025, indicating the potential for significant adverse impacts that would be assessed and disclosed further in an upcoming EIS. Next slide, please. So a critical step in this EIS process is what is known as public scoping, and I will now explain about what this means. A draft scope of work, or DSOW, is a document that identifies the technical analysis areas that will be included in the EIS, as well as the methodologies that would be utilized for those analyses. Think of the draft scope of work as essentially a work plan for preparing an EIS. During the scoping comment period, we welcome comments pertaining to the draft scope of work. This public scoping period therefore represents a critical opportunity for the public to help shape the formulation of this project's EIS. Next slide, please. And the purpose of this meeting is to allow the public to provide their comments on the draft scope of work and allow the department to listen to those comments. It's important for all voices to be heard today. Note that no decisions will be made today regarding the draft scope of work. On November 14th, 2025, as noted, HPD issued the draft scope of work together with the public scoping notice alerting the public of today's meeting and the deadline to submit written comments on the draft scope, which is Friday, January 30th, 2026 at 5 p.m. You notice that here on the screen. The notice was published in the City Record, the New York State Environmental Notice Bulletin, the Jewel Streets Neighborhood Plan webpage on HPD's website, as well as the Environmental Review webpage on HPD's website. We're here to collect your comments on the draft scope of work. As mentioned prior, note that you have until 5 p.m. on January 30th, 2026 to submit any comments in writing. Please note, written comments are considered equally with the comments that are received in person today. You may view the project's environmental review documents at the link noted here on this slide, which will also be provided in the Zoom chat as well as through MOEC's CEQR Access portal, searching under the CEQR number 26HPD019Y. Next slide, please. As mentioned prior, the scoping period, which again runs through January 30th at 5 p.m., will help shape the final scope of work and draft environmental impact statement for this project. We are here today in a listening role to receive your comments on the draft scope of work. Please note that toward that end, we cannot individually respond to speakers this evening. All relevant comments that come in through the end of the public comment period will be responded to accordingly in the final scope of work. We will now go over some ground rules of the public testimony today. This protocol is intended to ensure that everyone has a chance to speak and that all voices are heard. During the public comment portion of this meeting, which will come after the presentation, Those who have registered to speak will have 3 minutes to provide comment. Please be mindful of these time limits when it is your turn to speak, because they are important so that everyone who wishes to speak may do so. When it is your turn, please state your name first, and then you may begin testimony. Please be respectful. If your comments this evening are threatening or abusive, you will be removed from the meeting. Next slide, please. If you did not register to speak initially and decide during this meeting that you would like to speak, again, please fill out the form that is circulated in the Zoom chat and your name will be called. As a reminder, if you're dialing in and wish to testify by phone, in addition to filling out the form, please see the dialing instructions on this screen here. They're also in the chat. Next slide. So I will come back, but I will now pass this on to a presentation over to my colleagues, Rose Katie and Paula Torres, who will describe in greater detail the proposed project and necessary ULURP actions. Rose?
Thanks, Anthony. We're going to go ahead and get started. We can go to the next slide. So our presentation this evening is going to include an overview of the Jewel Streets neighborhood plan, followed by proposed strategies for each sub-area. Next, we'll be going over the city's environmental review and public approvals process. And then following our presentation, we'll start the public testimony portion of this evening. Just a reminder that if you wish to speak, please sign up using the form in the chat so that we can make sure we call on you and give you the ability to unmute yourself when it's your time to speak. Next slide. So why the Jewel Streets? Our neighborhood plan was released in October, and this plan really aims to foster a more resilient, livable, and connected neighborhood in an area that's faced historic disinvestment and major environmental justice issues. The plan is also the culmination of 3 years of public engagement and visioning with local residents and a really committed coalition of stakeholders. This holistic plan includes long overdue commitments to construct a climate-resilient sewer system in a neighborhood that has needed sewers for decades, new bus lanes and traffic safety improvements on Linden and Conduit, new housing on major corridors and city-owned sites, as well as ongoing enforcement to improve day-to-day quality of life as the long-term investments are taking shape. Next slide. So many of you are really familiar with the study area, but before we get into the neighborhood plan content, we're going to start with some background to show how we got here. Next slide. Thanks. So this is our study area map looking south towards Jamaica Bay. The full area includes Brooklyn to the right on the screen and Queens to the left, divided by the white line in the center. The shape in orange is the 12-block area that we refer to as the Jewel Streets. In the middle of the screen is Linden Boulevard, the area's major commercial corridor that bisects our neighborhood plan area. There's currently many vacant lots along this corridor, and we're also aware of significant development interest here. Conduit Avenue is on the bottom of the screen and is our northern border. And both Conduit and Linden are really wide streets without many crosswalks, making it really difficult to get around the neighborhood. Last, the shape in blue is the 17-acre, largely vacant city-owned site 2 blocks south of Linden, where we see a big opportunity for a variety of uses. Next slide. So in the past few years, we've had a lot of community engagement to get to where we're at now in terms of priorities. We held 6 workshops with over 300 participants, 6 neighborhood tours, bi-weekly meetings with local stakeholders, and additional specific meetings for residents to speak directly with agencies about quality of life concerns and the immediate short-term work being done in the neighborhood. Next slide. So the work in the Jewel Streets has really been happening for both the short and the long term, running on parallel tracks. There's a lot of work on the ground that's already been happening in the neighborhood. We have some really amazing agency partners, including the 75th and 106th precincts at NYPD, DOB, DSS, and DSNY, who have mobilized under the umbrella of Community Link to conduct joint agency operations to address the most immediate quality of life issues in the neighborhood. DEP has also already been doing a lot of work in the area to provide temporary relief to flooding conditions while developing the long-term drainage infrastructure plan for the neighborhood, including installing catch basins and constantly responding to the neighborhood after storms. And DSNY and DOB have both been really critical on addressing the illegal industrial businesses in this residential area, addressing abandoned vehicles, and clearing up debris. So these 5 goals were part of our progress report, which we released in February this year, and they really continue to inform our neighborhood plan. Just to quickly recap these, the main one is to reduce flooding, including solutions for the short term, but also in the long term and planning for climate change. But we know that installing new infrastructure is not enough, so we have many layers included in our plan to lead to a safer and better neighborhood. We've also developed a land use vision for the area, which Paolo will step through, but it's mainly defining what land use changes can support the future of this area. And related to that, we've developed a community-supported vision for the city-owned site. This is a really big site which could accommodate affordable housing, jobs, open space, and also increase connectivity across the neighborhood. We're working really closely with teams at DOT, thinking about the future of Linden and Conduit. There are active DOT studies happening on both corridors, and also in a wider strategy to make streets safer and make it easier for people to get around, including improving transit. And finally, we're also thinking about adding jobs, community services, and businesses to support a strong community. Next slide. So before we share our future land use vision, we want to just quickly note the existing zoning in the neighborhood. So you can see here that the different zoning districts are represented by the colors on the map. Areas where smaller houses are permitted are indicated in light yellow, and this takes up most of the map. Larger apartment complexes are permitted in the darker yellow areas like Linden Plaza, Linden Terrace, and Spring Creek Gardens. And the low density zoning on Linden really limits new development opportunities. So commercial uses are permitted in some places along Linden, like at the Lindenwood Diner, the former Cineplex, and Linden Center. Though as you can see from the zoning districts that are currently mapped there, there are a lot of gaps in where commercial uses are actually allowed to be built. So we know that zoning is a tool that can really encourage development that's aligned with the community vision and all of the goals and strategies that we just went through. Next slide. So this is our draft planning framework that we released about a year ago, and it was a really essential component of our February progress report on Linden, describing mixed use, medium density that could provide new opportunities for affordable housing, retail, and public space. On the city-owned site, also mixed use, medium density development that could also bring in new neighborhood amenities and new street and pedestrian connections through the neighborhood. On Conduit, we're not contemplating any land use changes, although DOT is working on a study here, like I mentioned, to rethink the street design and improve safety, which we're very much a partner on. And then lastly, in the Jewel Streets, our number one goal is to reduce flooding and improve quality of life through new green infrastructure like blue belts and other capital investments. And this planning framework really lays the groundwork for our proposed rezoning, which Paolo will share later in the presentation. So just to quickly recap where we're at today, this planning process really started from a call to action letter that Jewel Streets residents, community organizations like the East New York Community Land Trust and Cypress Hills Local Development Corporation and other local elected officials sent back in February 2022, asking the city to begin addressing the flooding, infrastructure, and quality of life issues in the neighborhood. HPD started our engagement in June 2023, where we held those workshops. The last one was in October 2024, where we presented the draft strategies. We released our progress report in February, which included the planning framework that we just saw. And we released the neighborhood plan this October. Today, we're here at environmental scoping and looking to the near future next year. We'll be starting the neighborhood plan and Bluebelt Joint ULURP. And with that, I will hand it to Paula to walk us through the drainage, transportation, and land use strategies by sub-area.
Thank you so much, Rose. So getting started with the Jewel Streets, the goal here for this sub-area is to really create a more resilient and connected neighborhood with better drainage, improved streets, and new housing that can respond to future climate impacts. So we're doing this by continuing the immediate short-term quality of life work in the neighborhood in partnership with many agencies that Rose talked about earlier. And at the same time, we're looking to the future. So DEP's drainage infrastructure plan will guide this change, and we'll get into the details about that next. So we know that you're familiar with the area, but before we go into the drainage strategies, just want to spend a minute talking about why the Jewel Streets flood. So there are two main factors at play. The first one is that the neighborhood is in the historical path of Spring Creek. So the streets are below grade and there is a high water table. And in addition to that, there is no stormwater or sanitary sewers. So that what that means is that for the water, it's really easy to get into the neighborhood. And once it gets there, it's really hard to drain it out. So what are we thinking in terms of the future? What you see here is DEP's holistic drainage infrastructure plan, which includes a mix of gray and green infrastructure with components in the north and the south Jewel Streets, as well as in the city on site. So the key features of their plan are a network of floor blue belts or retention ponds, two in the north Jewel Streets, that is that area that you see in blue, two in the city on site, further south, new stormwater and sanitary sewers for serving this neighborhood, and also new raised streets in the Jewel Streets, that in the south, we know that it would be up to 10 feet for the water to be able to get through gravity to the city on site. And finally, all these systems are complemented by a storm and sanitary pump station that will be located in the city on site, taking the storm water to Spring Creek. Here, we also want to highlight that this plan is really designed to meet New York City's highest stormwater service level, managing a rainfall from a 10-year storm. That is approximately 2.3 inches of rain per hour. And just for context, most of New York City is still designed to serve up to 1.7 inches of rain per hour. So DEP is really thinking about serving this neighborhood in the future. So in this cross section, what you can see are the way that these components are working together a little bit more clear, and how this is a creative and holistic solution for the neighborhood. In blue, you see the stormwater system, and in brown, the sanitary sewer system. So in blue, you see how the stormwater system is complemented by the network of blue belts or retention ponds. This nature-based solution is used to filter the stormwater and also serve as open spaces that residents can enjoy. The water from the North Jewel Street that you see on the screen is being directed and pumped to the city on site. And then the water from the North Jewel Street is going by gravity to the blue belts. The sanitary sewer from the north and south are combined, and they're being pumped to DEP's main line, also on the city on site. And that will really eliminate the need for septic tanks in the neighborhood, which are one of the key drivers for the environmental justice in this neighborhood. So we went through these components already. This is just a summary of everything that we just discussed, but here we just want to highlight that in addition to this new drainage network, the streets will also be regraded in a project that is going to be led by DOT and DDC, and this will bring sidewalks and trees to the Jewel Streets. So supporting all the infrastructure work that we just discussed, we also were really excited to share back in September that the Jewel Streets will actually be a pilot neighborhood for the city's new resilient acquisition program. And this program is being piloted here to ensure that residents that are living the most impacted and lowest laying portions of the neighborhood will have the city's support to navigate options to relocate to less flood prone areas. And at the same time, as part of this pilot, the city will also work with homeowners to navigate options to retrofit their homes as the long-term drainage plan takes shape. Though the expression of interest that you see on the screen has been live since September, and the city has already received some interest from residents. Moving on to land use and starting in the North Jewel Streets, here we really want to support the redevelopment of vacant land and industrial lots in the areas where we know that the planned drainage infrastructure will be able to support this new development. So we'll go one by one. We're going to start with in the light yellow portion in the middle of the screen where it says R5. Here we'd like to support the level of density that currently we see in Drew Street, where there are small homes and apartment buildings. So we're proposing a slight bump in density going from an R4 to R5. So that means going from allowing 2 to 4 stories, matching the zoning of most of the surrounding neighborhoods. This area of the neighborhood will be serviced by the new drainage infrastructure that DEP is planning and the new streets. So this small increase in density is really to allow for new infill housing on the vacant lots. And we're extending the district just past Ruby Street towards the east, as this is an important north-south connection in the neighborhood. Moving on to the small area in the lower right of the map in light orange, here we're proposing a transition between the slightly larger buildings on Linden and the smaller homes on the neighborhood streets. So for this area, we're proposing an R6D district, which means up to 7 stories. And going to the bright yellow on the left of the screen, we're planning on extending the existing R6 district to the north to include part of an additional block to allow the existing church to expand in the future if they want to. So that would be up to 13 stories. And lastly, in the northeast portion, without any shading, so towards the right, we're planning on keeping this area R4 and really focusing on strengthening the connectivity of this area to other parts of the neighborhood. So in the South Jewel Street, we know, as I mentioned, that as part of the planned drainage infrastructure, there will be new elevated and reconnected streets, which really could encourage a mix of uses such as housing and also open space. So mirroring what we already went through in the North Jewel Streets, here we're proposing a rezoning from R4 to R5, allowing for small homes and apartment buildings of up to 4 stories, matching the zoning again of most of the surrounding neighborhoods. And below Linden, mirroring what we saw in the north too, we have a step down district to transition to lower density. So along 79th Street, which is what you see on the right, it's at grade and has access to sewers. We're proposing an R6D district or up to 7 stories, and closer to Linden, an R6A or up to 9 stories. And we're including this last one on the map, but this is actually part of an existing private application that is currently in Europe. Moving on to Linden, our goal here is to support a safer and more active corridor through adding new affordable housing, businesses, and community services. So this includes making the boulevard safer for pedestrians, improving connectivity to transit, and encouraging the redevelopment of the vacant lots along the corridor with new housing, stores, and community spaces. Everything that we heard throughout the community engagement that is much needed in the area. So moving on to transportation, just want to note that DOT, as Rose mentioned up front, is currently working on a bus and safety improvement plan for Linden, which they began late last year, and the implementation of some of the pedestrian safety measures will start as soon as next spring. So we're looking at DOT when it comes to transportation strategies. So in the interest of time, I'll keep moving to the land use piece on Linden. So Linden connects the neighborhood to other parts of the city and has the potential to really knit these neighborhoods together, connecting East New York and Lindenwood and both North and South Jewel Streets. So considering that what you see in pink is a proposed increase in density across the corridor to a C45D district or up to 12 stories to really spur development, especially on the vacant lots with multiple floors of commercial uses below housing. In darker red, you can see our community hub nodes at these 2 key locations that are connected to the streets that go up to Euclid and Grand Avenue subway stations. We're planning for densities of C45X and C45, that's up to 14 stories, to create these activity hubs with a mix of retail and community services on the ground floor and housing above. In hot pink, you'll see a C24 commercial overlay, which is really not changing the underlying residential zoning. It's simply allowing for flexibility for commercial development to occur in the future if this is desired on this Linden frontages, really complementing the active corridor along Linden that we talked about. And lastly, same as I mentioned, for the Jewel Streets in orange, we have R6A and R6D, allowing our 9 and 7 stories respectively, responding to Linden as a step down before the lower density residential. Moving on to Conduit, the main goals here for the corridor are to increase connectivity, safety, and open space, and also focusing on reconnecting the communities that are on either side of the corridor and making it better for pedestrians, for bikes, for transit, and also for cars. As we mentioned earlier, in Conduit, we're not considering any zoning changes, so the main strategies here really come from DOT's existing study that includes the Jewel Street section in the middle, but goes from Atlantic Avenue in Brooklyn to Lefferts Boulevard in Queens. They already begun their work. Maybe some of you know already and joined some of their workshops. Their plan is to release a final plan by the end of 2026, and then the implementation will come after that. And their possible outcomes for their study focus on safety. So that means more space for people that are walking and on bikes, for example, including crosswalks with shorter crossings. The second one is green space. So having public parks that include drainage systems like green infrastructure and retention ponds, because that median really floods a lot. And then the last one is really reclaiming and activating the median for community uses. Moving on to our next and last sub-area on the city-owned site, we think this is a great opportunity to develop a resilient mixed-use community with affordable homes, retail, and community spaces. We're thinking about new streets that can break up this super block and reconnect the neighborhoods south of Linden, and also thinking about new open space and the green infrastructure to benefit both the new development in the site and the broader neighborhood. So focusing on the drainage and open space strategies, starting with the drainage, the green infrastructure that will be located on the site can support DEP's continuous drainage corridor that connects the north of Linden Boulevard, so the North Jewel Streets, down to Spring Creek Park. This supports, again, the drainage solution for the site and also the surrounding area. On open space, the blue belts, like the ones on the North Jewel Streets, will be accessible to the public and have walking paths and seating areas. These open spaces are also connected to the restoration of 40 acres of wetlands around Spring Creek that is being done by the Army Corps of Engineers. But the site can also include other types of open spaces like a commons and smaller plazas for people to gather. Going into transportation and land use, we're working really closely with urban design consultants and the Department of City Planning to summarize and show what we heard throughout the community engagement process. So this map really highlights the transportation and land use priorities for the site. On transportation, the main focus here is really, again, to complete the missing links in the street grid, making Wortman the main east-west connector, and continuing Amber and Emerald and as north-south streets, and prioritizing Emerald as a neighborhood connector since that one goes up to Linden Boulevard. For land use, the density can be moved around the site, but the general thinking is having higher density towards residential buildings that are along Linden and also the NYCHA campuses that are close by, and lower density near the homes by Lindenwood, Queens. We're also thinking about a mix of homeownership and rental, as well as a commercial overlay that would allow retail and community spaces to activate this area. So what you see here is an illustrative drawing of what is possible and highlights the priorities and key components that were identified through the community engagement process with some callouts. This is one of the 3 examples that we included in the neighborhood plan. So some of our priorities that we're thinking about is first, having a mix of different scales. So you can see here maisonettes on the basis of higher buildings, for example. In terms of open space, we're really trying to focus on having a mix of spaces, including plazas, playgrounds that relate and connect to DEP's proposal of a green infrastructure retention pond here, and thinking about a buffer towards the existing Department of Sanitation facility towards the south. And finally, having an active ground floor is a really big priority for us here. So the commercial overlay can support this, allowing retail, community facilities, and services. So after going through all of this individually, this is how it looks, the proposed zoning map, where you can see the full vision for the area. As you can see, Linden Boulevard is activated as the main corridor with the 2 main nodes and a continued active floor throughout the corridor that can be supported by DOT's work on the safety and transit improvements. And then you can also see the small app zonings for the Jewel Streets and the city-owned site in alignment, responding to the surrounding neighborhoods. Moving on to the proposed land use actions. These are the actions that were included in the draft scope of work that Anthony mentioned at the beginning, and that we're using as the basis to analyze the impacts that he's going to go through. So for the general study area, we have zoning map amendments that include all the zoning changes that we just went through in all of the sub areas. And then we have zoning text amendments to map MIH areas that and then to allow also a floor area exception for schools within the MIH areas in both Brooklyn CB5 and Queens CB10. Going specifically on the Jewel Streets, there are land use actions related to DEP's infrastructure work, including site selection, acquisition, and disposition of land, and also or including acquisition actions to give the city the ability to implement the resilient acquisitions pilot. And finally, specifically on the city-owned site, we have city map changes to the map some of the unbuilt streets that go through the site. We have disposition of city-owned property, and then finally, the designation and approval of an urban development action area. And here I will pass it to Anthony.
Thank you, Paula, for the presentation, and to Rose for the presentation prior. For those who have just joined after my comments earlier, I'll introduce myself again and provide information on the public comment period. I'm Anthony Howard, the Director of Environmental Planning for the New York City Department of Housing Preservation and Development. HPD is acting as the lead agency for the required environmental review for the Jewel Streets Neighborhood Plan. The time is now 5:38 p.m. This is the public scoping meeting for this proposal. Please note that tonight's meeting is being recorded so that we may accurately and fully capture all comments from the public. Next slide, please. For the benefit of those who may have joined late, I am going to briefly repeat some information. You can get to the next slide. There are two ways to provide comments during the scoping comment period. First, you may speak publicly during this public scoping meeting. If you wish to speak and have not signed up, please do so using the form provided in the Zoom chat. It was just circulated a few moments ago as well. So if you can hover to the chat function at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there would be a link to access the form to sign up to speak. Additionally, if you're on the phone and would like to provide comment, please see the instructions that are on the screen here. All may speak for 3 minutes. And please note, if you are joining over the phone and or if you're speaking testimony over Zoom, give us a few moments to be able to identify the person and allow them to unmute themselves. So there may be a little bit of a delay as we call up the speakers. If you do not wish to speak publicly or cannot do so, you may submit comments in writing, either over email or via postal service to the addresses indicated on this slide. We will also provide this information in the chat. There is no length limitation on written comments. We began accepting comments on November 14th, 2025, and will continue to do so until 5 p.m. on January 30th, 2026. All public comments, no matter how they are received, will be given equal attention and responded to equally. Please note the purpose of this meeting is to hear your comments and to incorporate them into the official record for this project. We cannot respond directly to individual speakers or comments this evening. Next slide, please. So I know that we've given a lot of information here, and I gave you some context about environmental review, and Paula and Rose spoke about the land use strategies and actions that is being considered here, and I'm going to just provide a summary, high level of the implementation milestones that are required here. There are two public review processes that are happening in tandem. There is the environmental review process, which is the subject of tonight's meeting. There is also the process under the Uniform Land Use Review Procedure, or what we know as, or what we call a ULURP. The environmental review process started with the release of the draft scope of work around a month ago, and we're meeting today to start the process to define the range of issues and methods of analysis that would be employed in the environmental impact statement. We will take the comments that we received today in writing and respond in a final scope of work to any substantive comments that are received. At the time of the final scope of works release, we will also release the draft EIS or DEIS at the stage of ULURP certification, which you will note here in this chart as right in the middle, where the two processes sort of come together in their milestones. The EIS will be published in connection with the application certifying into ULURP. Certification means that the City Planning Commission has determined that the land use application is ready for public review. And ULURP, as I mentioned, is a public review process that it lasts around 7 months. And it is triggered whenever any major land use changes like zoning, city maps, or acquisition or disposition of city-owned property is being sought to facilitate a proposed action. After HPD submits all the application materials, the certification of the application is effectuated, and there is a public meeting with the City Planning Commission to kick off the ULURP process, which would then go to the community boards, borough presidents, City Planning Commission, and finally the City Council and the mayor. All of these stakeholders have a specific timeline to hold a public hearing and vote on the proposal. We want to highlight here that there will be many public hearings throughout the process, as I've indicated just now. And there will be opportunities at each stage for the public to have a voice in the review. Next slide, please. So for the environmental review, HPD, as I mentioned prior, is the lead agency. The build year or analysis year for the proposed actions is 2040. That means that the EIS will be analyzing the potential future conditions at the year 2040, when we expect that all the development from the proposed actions would occur. The framework for the analysis as proposed is the following. There would be an introduction of 5,150 dwelling units, including up to 2,477 affordable dwelling units across 33 projected development sites. Around 1,458 of those dwelling units are projected to come from the city-owned site alone. The proposed actions would also generate around 147,948 gross square feet of commercial uses being local retail, supermarket, and offices. And it would also generate around 256,459 gross square feet of community facility uses, which could comprise of medical offices or houses of worship. So at a high level for the environmental review, the next steps the EAS positive declaration draft scope of work were released in November. As noted, we're having the public scoping meeting today, and we are anticipating ULURP certification and issuance of the DEIS around the spring or summer of 2026. Next slide, please. So here, these are the technical areas that will be assessed in the environmental impact statement. These technical areas, with the exception of the final one, disadvantaged communities, are all technical areas that are required to be assessed in accordance with the CEQR environmental review process. So every one of these technical areas will have a full analysis provided in concert with the guidelines of the CEQR technical manual. The last area here for disadvantaged communities is being analyzed as well as a result of recent changes to the state's environmental review laws. Next slide, please. Okay, we will now move on to the public comment portion of this meeting. I would want to note that first, we are going to be inviting comments from elected officials and community board representatives speaking on the behalf of the community board. We will then invite the public to speak in the order in which they signed up. So that everyone is ready to provide their comments, I am going to call several speakers at once. If you hear your name or the last 3 digits of your phone number, please be at the ready. Please remember, if you are dialing in by phone, you must press *6 to unmute your microphone when it is your turn to speak. Please state your name before beginning your comments. We will continue with speakers until everyone who wishes to speak has spoken, at which point we will adjourn the meeting. As a reminder, please be mindful of the time limits. We will have a clock on the screen to help manage time. So as I mentioned, I'm going to start with comments from elected officials and community board members in the order in which they have signed up. So I notice here that we have Council Member Chris Banks in the room to provide testimony. And I'm going to ask my team to give Council Member Banks the opportunity to unmute and provide testimony.
Good night, everyone. I'm submitting these comments as the member of the New York City Council representing the 42nd Council District. East New York is home to a large portion of the proposed Jewel Street neighborhood plan. And my comments are regarding to the draft scope of work and for the environmental impact statement. This neighborhood plan, if enacted, would undoubtedly transform this area by bringing over 5,000 new residential units and hundreds of new jobs and infrastructure investments to the Jewel Street area. Over the past 2 years, as a representative from Brooklyn, side of the Jewel Street community, I have continuously advocated for this plan and for the improvement of the overall conditions in this area. I've organized tours and actions by various city agencies, including the Department of Buildings, HPD, DEP, community residents, and other stakeholders, resulting in the improvement of conditions in the area as we prepare for the implementation of this plan. I've always stressed the need for inclusive planning that prioritizes the top concerns of my constituents. Numerous city agencies have participated in workshops, info sessions, and meetings with residents for years. And my comments on the DSOW reflects what I've heard from residents and my concerns with what is proposed. I would be remiss if I did not express my desire to see a sense of urgency in the timeline for the work to be completed under this plan. Residents of the Jewel Street community have suffered the adversity of flooding, poor sewage conditions, and inadequate infrastructure and unacceptable living conditions for far too long. It is with the utmost importance that this plan incorporate the much needed upgrades to the streets that make up the Jewel Street community before the any plan upgrades to Linden Boulevard are completed or start. We must ensure that this plan takes a strategic and systemic approach to ensuring that it prevents further harm and hardship to these residents. 10 years to begin this work is far too long, and that timeline must be shortened. Many of these residents have been fighting for these improvements for years. And the reality is that many of them may not have another 10 years to wait to see these improvements realized. So I look forward to working with HPD and the residents of Jewel Street community and community advocates, other city agencies, and all stakeholders to ensure that this project is not simply completed, but completed in the most efficient and effective manner possible. Thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, Anthony, I think you're muted.
Thank you very much, Paula. I thank you, council member, for your comments. We've recorded them. I just want to make a quick note to clarify, if you are a community board member that is speaking on behalf of the community board, we will prioritize you in the queue as a community board member, giving the stated opinion of the community board here. I am now going to continue with the elected officials. and note that we have, on behalf of State Senator Roxanne Persaud, Jennifer Horsford, and I apologize if I mispronounce names. I apology. Okay, like my team, I'd like to get Ms. Horsford available to speak.
A pleasant afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
I am honored to represent State Senator Roxanne J. Persaud for over the few years, the site visits and all of this. And we want to thank the agencies involved. As Councilmember Chris Banks say, we've listened to the residents. We feel their pain, but action is necessary. And we like to add urgent and emergency to the situation to be able to articulate your vision and bring it to fruition. So I thank you, and I thank everyone who has worked, not just look, but take action to make sure that the residents feel heard. And now is our time to move quickly, because there are storms, there are other things that we do not have control over. And so we have to ensure that the residents in the Jewel Street are safe, and especially the children. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. I now will having seen right now that we have our elected officials have spoken, we will come back as necessary. We'll now pass it to Betty Bratton.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. My name is Betty Brayton. I'm the chairperson of Queens Community Board 10. I'd also like to point out that Mr. Kevin Rowan, who is the chair of our sewer committee, is present on this meeting, and he is authorized also to speak for the board. And Mr. Gary Hewitt, the chair of our transportation committee, is also on the call. We will be submitting written testimony, as 3 minutes is not enough to say what we need to say. We are not in favor of seeing anything move forward in terms of ULURP on the Queens side of the area. The development patterns in Queens are different from the development patterns in Brooklyn. Brooklyn area of the Jewel Streets is certainly not as developed as the portion of the area in the study area that is on the Queen side, which is a fully developed community. The Jewel Street's actual area on the Queen side is our concern. And we have said it, and we hope that this environmental review will focus on the need for sewers and streets. That to us is our primary concern. All of the other issues and concerns that are being talked about in the Jewel Streets plan basically deal with improving housing, and all of us in the city understand that housing is a need. However, we need to deal with the issues where the people who actually live in the Queen side of the Jewel Streets live. Whether or not the pilot program will succeed, we do not know. We do not know that this long-term sewer work and street work will actually ever occur. It hasn't occurred in pretty much my entire lifetime. So we would urge you to focus on the needs in the community that exists now. Getting the streets raised and streets constructed and getting workable sewer system in that area. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Was that the end of your testimony, Ms. Brayton? Okay. Now we will move on. I see we have another member representing Queens Community Board 10 officially. We have Kevin Rowan. I apologies if there's a mispronunciation. Kevin, are you able to unmute yourself?
Yes, I am, and you said my name properly. Thank you.
Great. We can hear you.
Good evening. My name is Kevin Rowan, and I am the chairman of the Sewers Committee for Queens Community Board 10, as well as a member of its Land Use Committee. I am deeply concerned that the Jewel Streets Neighborhood Plan, as presently proposed through the draft scope of work, would detrimentally impact various aspects of the Jewel Streets and the surrounding communities. I respectfully request that the city agencies review the impact of this plan on 1, the sustainability of the area's electrical grid, 2, the area's local public school system, including elementary, middle school, and high schools, 3, the surrounding police departments, and 4, the local fire stations. The Jewel Streets neighborhood project began with the best of intentions to build a sustainable sewer system and fully alleviate for the neighborhood, once and for all, the long-term flooding that pervades the Jewel Streets. I believe the residents deserve this infrastructure as soon as humanly possible, as the city has failed them for decades. However, the project as proposed has now turned into a plan unrecognizable from its initially stated goals, prioritizing increased zoning changes before all structural needs have been remediated. Zoning increases before flooding in the Jewel Streets have been halted. Zoning increases before even one new sewer pipe has been installed, and zoning increases before any consideration of creating a new public school, fire station, and police department for new and existing residents in the area. Based on the proposed plan, you would think that the residents voiced strong approval for the increased zoning and, in effect, larger buildings to take over. But the opposite is true. The key takeaways from one of the city's public workshops, public workshop number 4, states that there was, quote, consensus that new storm infrastructure is required before new development occurs. Additionally, key takeaways from another workshop, workshop number 5, states that there was a consensus to, quote, develop new housing that matches the size and shape of current buildings related to the North and South Jewel Streets. It's not semantics, this is consensus public feedback. Additionally, flooding remains prevalent in the area. Abandoned vehicles remain ubiquitous in the area to this day. Regardless of the number of abandoned vehicles collected to date, that number will continue to increase if the underlying structural issues are not addressed. Any new zoning and housing development should not see any discussion before a new sewer system is implemented and the flooding is alleviated once and for all. We also do not know the impact of the area's electrical grid, given local summer heat waves resulting in lower allowed voltage in communities, and the impact of local law 154 requiring new buildings to be fully electrical. And finally, a neighborhood is not only made up of just housing. With new buildings being envisioned to be built, some as high as 7, 9, and 13 stories high, we do not know the impact of this on local police precincts, fire departments, and public schools. For the foregoing reasons, I respectfully request that the city agencies review the environmental impact on the 5 topics I have discussed to truly see the comprehensive impact of this premature plan on the residents of the Jewel Streets. And I thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Rowan. Appreciate that. Please note your comments may be submitted in writing as well. We are now moving on to comments from the general public. So I am going to call speakers in groups of 3. If you hear your name, please be prepared to give testimony. So the first speaker we have is Daniel Kimya, followed by Jacqueline Scarinci, and then Meredith McNair. Daniel, if you should be able to unmute yourself. Do we have Daniel in the room? Okay. Daniel, you are being provided the opportunity to unmute. You should be unmuting your microphone so that we can hear you. We can make a note to come back to Daniel where it seems like we're having technical issues. We can't hear him. We will come back to Daniel. We're moving on to Jacqueline Scarinci, followed by Meredith McNair and LaShawn Cox. Jacqueline Scarinci, you should be able to unmute yourself and provide testimony.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Scarinci, and I will be reading the testimony of Larry Davis, CEO of Shorewood Real Estate Group, Written testimony will also be submitted after this evening's public hearing. We apologize for not being there in person this evening, as the Jewel Streets has become such an important place to us since our investment in the 8.6-acre parcel of the former Cineplex site in 2023. As you all know, the first phase of our redevelopment was to transform the vacant Cineplex site into a 70,000 square foot full-service supermarket. This effort began in 2023 with substantial rehab of the building and successful grand opening of the Food Bazaar this past summer. However, our long-term goal is to make the rest of the site a community hub with mixed-use development and larger commercial spaces, as well as affordable housing opportunities. Food Bazaar will serve as our anchor tenant to spur this new mixed-use redevelopment. The remainder of our site has long been underutilized as surface parking, and the Jewel Streets plan presents this exciting opportunity for us to transform it into an improved pedestrian-friendly development where people can come to live, work, and participate. Tonight, we are requesting 2 items. First, that the city strongly consider and remove the proposed mapping action of Forble Street, which would go directly through the current Food Bazaar supermarket, that we see as a part of the long-term visioning of our site. The mapping of Forble Street in its current location will create practical difficulty for the short-term and long-term redevelopment of our site. The supermarket was just redeveloped this past year and has no long-term plans of relocating. And this will act as a cloud on title with no real redevelopment strategy for the city to take this part of our property to redevelop it as a city-owned street. Additionally, it conflicts with our overall strategy to prioritize pedestrian access and walkability over vehicular access. Second, we would like to request an expansion of the greater transit zone geography in order to facilitate our redevelopment proposal, which would include a substantial number of affordable housing units and would otherwise be required to provide a significant amount of parking that we believe would not be utilized. Thank you for considering our proposal. We look forward to continuing to work together with the city on this new exciting project. Thank you.
Thank you, Jacqueline. Are you speaking on behalf of Bogopa as well, or is that the entirety of your testimony? Jacqueline, you're muted. We may not.
You.
Go ahead. We can hear you now.
Oh, okay. Yes, I also have a statement from Bogopa. So my name is Jacqueline Scarinci, and I'm reading the testimony of Spencer Ahn and Edward Suh, principals of Bogopa, the owners and operators of Food Bazaar supermarkets. We apologize for not being here this evening, and the Jewel Streets is now the home to our brand new, modern, state-of-the-art supermarket at the former vacant Cineplex site. This is one of our largest and most exciting stores, and the Jewel Streets has not had quality fresh produce supermarkets of this scale in years. We have been committed to the Jewel Streets since our purchase back in 2023, and we appreciated our partnership with Councilman Chris Banks and Brooklyn CB5 in hosting a job fair to ensure residents got first opportunity at these new supermarket jobs. We're proud to report that we've hired 150 employees from the Jewel Streets and surrounding neighborhoods at this location. The Jewel Streets is our long-term home, and we are committed to the residents here. We are here tonight to express our concerns with the city's proposal to map Forble Street directly through our existing Food Bazaar supermarket. The proposed mapping of Forble Street in its current location will create great difficulties for us to refinance and redevelop in the long term, making it extremely difficult with our lenders and unnecessarily tie up the site for future redevelopment of housing and other commercial uses. Thank you for considering our proposal, and we look forward to working with the city on this.
Thank you, Ms. Carinci. Okay, so we are going to Meredith McNair, followed by LaShawn Cox, and then we will go back to Daniel Kimya. Meredith McNair, you should have the ability to unmute yourself After Meredith, LaShawn Cox, and then back to Daniel Kimya.
Good evening. My name is Meredith McNair. I'm a community planner at Cypress Hills Local Development Corporation. For the past 5 years, I've had the great pleasure of working alongside Jewel Street's residents and other local activists to fight for infrastructure upgrades and other improvements to this community. The plan the city has proposed includes many of our demands, and I want to see this plan succeed. But in order for it to succeed, there are some grave environmental risks that the city needs to take a hard look at and thoroughly mitigate. First, this area has widespread contamination from faulty septic tanks, cesspools, and illegal commercial activity. We want to see thorough testing of the soil and the groundwater, both on public and private sites. The current EIS scope only calls for a phase 1 on public sites and a visual inspection of private sites, but illegal polluting uses have often been unpermitted and may not show up in a record search, and their impacts might not be visible to the naked eye. We also know that the vast majority of the planning area, including Linden Boulevard, is in the existing floodplain. Flood risk will be even more widespread and severe by 2080. How will this risk be mitigated for both new and existing structures, including the new infrastructure? Will the city impose strict floodproofing design guidelines for new buildings, as well as retrofit options for existing homes? How will raising the streets impact flooding on homes below street level? Can the Stanley Avenue lot serve as a resilience hub and a safe haven for the surrounding neighborhoods as they face flooding? And also, the analysis should not be limited to coastal flooding, but also groundwater and stormwater flooding. Lastly, the plan calls for new housing on the city-owned lot on Stanley Avenue, which is a former landfill. We've heard reports of elevated asthma rates in the Gateway development, which was also built on a landfill. So my question is, has the city studied the impacts at Gateway, and how can we ensure that the Stanley lot will be fully remediated and developed safely? The last thing we'd want to see are over 1,000 new people move in only to develop chronic illness. So in closing, I ask that the city recognize the unique environmental vulnerabilities of this area and do its absolute best due diligence when studying and mitigating the impacts of the plan. Thank you for the chance to testify tonight.
Thank you for your testimony. We will now move on to LaShawn Cox, followed by Daniel Kimya again. And then after that will be Babar Buddha.
Good evening, everyone.
Yes.
Good evening, everyone. My name is LaShawn Cox. I am speaking on behalf of the residents of Ruby Street. I have a little prepared statement here that I prepared. In October 2010, I, along with 6 neighboring homeowners, purchased newly constructed homes from the same developer. All 7 homes are connected to a single private 6-inch diameter sewer line that discharge into the city sewer system. Approximately 4 months after occupancy, the sewer system began backing up through the storm drains located in front of our driveways and through our air vents at the front of our homes. Since that time, the repeated sewer backup have occurred, resulting in flooding of our driveways, creating serious health and sanitation concern. Also, a few neighbors' basements got flooded. Multiple licensed plumbing companies were retained in an attempt to identify and correct the issue without success. We also contacted the New York City Department of Environmental Protection on several occasions, but were advised that no corrective action could be taken by the agency at that time. On April 19, 2011, my attorney issued a formal written notice to the developer detailing these conditions. Following receipts of the letter, the developer made only 2 limited attempts to address the problem. Both of these were ineffective. No permanent repairs were completed. At the time of purchase, these homes were covered by a 1-year construction guarantee, which expired in 2011. Because the issue was not resolved within that time period, the homeowners have been left with significant and ongoing infrastructure defect that has persisted for more than a decade. Furthermore, at closing, each homeowner paid utility connection fees, including sewer connection fees. Despite this, the developer only paid one single sewer connection to the city, while using that connection to service all 7 homes. And mind you, these homes are multi-family homes, 2-family homes, all of them. This appeared to be a serious discrepancy that may have violated applicable building, plumbing, and permitting requirements. As a result of this condition, and in order to prevent repeated sewer flooding, which has occurred multiple times, the homeowners have been forced to spend thousands of dollars over the years to clean and maintain the private sewer line approximately every 3 months. We are respectfully requesting that the office review this matter, investigate further original sewer installation, and permit comply with city codes and regulation, and advise on any available enforcement action and remedies. This issue has caused long-term financial hardship, ongoing sanitation concern, and repeated property damage for affected
Thank you,
homeowners.
Mr. Cox. We understand. If you would like to provide your full, I know you have a prepared statement, you may submit it in writing as well to us. Thank you very much. I want to go, I see we have Daniel Kimya in the room, right? Welcome back. Daniel, please, you should be able to unmute your microphone and we can hear you provide your testimony.
Great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Good evening. My name is Daniel Kimya. I'm one of the principal owners of the vacant block on the north side of Linden Boulevard between Sapphire and Amber Street. I've been part of this community for nearly 25 years, and while I don't live directly on Jewel Streets, I share the same concern and long-term hopes for this neighborhood. First, I want to thank the city agencies involved for their hard work and engagement over the past 2 years. Our involvement here goes back to the year 2000, when we assembled Block 4474 in Brooklyn, consolidating 20 separate lots to develop new housing. In 2003, we were advised by DDC that the sewer construction on Jewel Street could result in raised street elevations. Because that project was never fully completed and continued to linger, and final grades were unclear, we could not responsibly move forward with construction. Building homes that might later sit below street level was not an option. We were contacted by DEP, which expressed interest in our property. We later learned about the Blue Belt Initiative. Although this land was originally intended for housing, we recognize that this effort would provide a significant public benefit and help address long-standing drainage issues in the community. We have actively participated and have remained engaged in nearly every community and agency meeting since. As the ULURP process moves forward, we respectfully ask that the rezoning of Block 4474 in Brooklyn allow for the housing density needed to make this project viable. We are particularly concerned about the proposed shift from C45D to R6D, which significantly reduces FAR and would result in a loss of affordable housing units, especially after we have given up a substantial portion of the site for public infrastructure. We ask city planning to consider extending the C45D zoning deeper into Block 4474, as Linden Boulevard is a wide corridor that can support higher density, and the Bluebird parcel behind us acts as a zoning transition on our specific block. This would allow us to deliver meaningful, affordable housing, support future home ownership, and create a vibrant mixed-use corridor. We also want to note the high water table on this block. Underground parking is not feasible, and extending the C45D zoning would allow for compliant parking to support retail, community facility, and residents, ensuring long-term success of the development. Finally, we ask that zoning parameter be clearly defined so that no future variances required adjacent to the blue belt on our block, avoiding unnecessary delays. We appreciate the opportunity to work collaboratively with the community, the City of New York, and the East New York CLT, and we look forward to continuing that partnership. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Kimya. Okay, we will now move on to Babar Buddha, followed by Deborah Ack, and then Julissa Rodriguez. And I will take this opportunity to remind everybody, If you would like to speak and you have not signed up to do so, please access the form with the link is provided in the chat for the Zoom. Okay, Mr. or Ms. Buddha. I don't think they are in the meeting. We will make a note and then call back to see if they are there. So we will go to Deborah Ack, followed by Julissa Rodriguez, and then Bart Acklin. Is Deborah Ack in the room?
Present.
Yes.
Hi, good evening, everyone. My name is Deborah Ack, and I am a member of the East New York Community Land Trust. I'm also a member of the Justice for the Jewel Streets Coalition. I've had the opportunity to work with the residents of the Jewel Streets for the past 4 years. I'd like to say I'm very much for the Jewel Streets Neighborhood Planning Project, but my whole thing with this planning project is that the infrastructure must be in place prior to any development along Linden Boulevard. The whole object of the Jewel Streets, the coalition, and us coming together with the residents was for infrastructure, not to have development all around them and still be without an infrastructure so that they can alleviate their septic tanks. Second, I'd like to say is what happens to the land after the residents they take a buyout program. I was a part of Rainproof NYC, and in the discussion, it was said that the land would become undevelopable due to the fact of the flooding. What happened with that process? I'm not seeing green space where homeowners are willing to take this buyout program. What happens to their land is a big concern of mine. Also, I'd like to also say that, like I said, there should be no development before infrastructure. Yes, it's nice that you want to redo Linden Boulevard, beautiful, but let's give the Jewel Street residents what they truly deserve, and that's a true and workable sewer system. Next, I'd also like to speak on the people who take the buyout program. Where are they to go? HPD is doing all this development. Let's give them the right to return to the neighborhood that they so desire to live in, that they've been a part of, that their children have been a part of. I don't want to see the displacement of these homeowners. Give them the right to return to their neighborhood. Have people work with them that will help them getting into the homes and the units that HPD is planning on developing. Again, my name is Deborah. I'm a member of the East New York CLT and the Justice for the Coalition, for the Justice for the Jewel Streets Coalition. And I thank you so much for this opportunity to testify. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ack. We will now move on to Julissa Rodriguez, followed by Bart Acklin, and then James Acelta. Apologies for any mispronunciations. Julissa Rodriguez, are you in the room? If so,
Present.
Okay, you may begin your testimony.
Hi, my name is Julissa Rodriguez, and I am a longtime resident of the south side of the Jewel Streets, where I have lived for 19 years. I am here today in strong support of this project because our community has waited far too long for meaningful investment, safety, and dignity. For nearly 2 decades, families like mine have lived through flooding, deteriorating conditions, and the constant stress of knowing our homes are vulnerable. This project is overdue and it is extremely urgent and necessary. However, supporting this project does not mean accepting harm. On the south side, the proposal to raise streets by as much as 10 feet has life-changing consequences. If done without care, it could leave homes buried below street level, create new flooding risks, limit access for seniors and emergency services, and place unbearable financial and emotional burden on residents who have already sacrificed so much. We support this project because we believe it can and must be done right. That means solutions that protect people without displacing them, infrastructure that strengthens our neighborhood without erasing it, and resilience measures that do not force families to choose between safety and staying in the homes they've built their lives around. Many residents here are working families, elders, and people living under economic constraints. After years of living under inhumane conditions, we deserve investment that lifts us up, not plans that push us out. As this environmental impact statement moves forward, I urge the city to fully study the impacts of raising streets by 10 feet, meaningfully evaluate alternatives that reduce harm to existing homes, guarantee that any buyouts are just, fair, true market value priced, and truly voluntary. And most importantly, continue to listen to the voices of the people who live here. We want safer streets. We want flood protection. We want long-term solutions. And we want them without displacement, without coercion, and without sacrificing the Jewel Streets community. We are not opposing progress. We are asking for progress with justice. Thank you for your time, and thank you for finally investing in the Jewel Streets.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. We will now move on to Bart Acklin, followed by James Acelta, and then Walter Basdeo. Mr. Acklin. I don't believe Bart is in the room. We will now move on to James Acelta, followed by Walter Basdeo. Is James in the room?
Yes.
James, you may begin your testimony.
Yeah, thank you. My name is James Acelta. I live on the Queens side of the Jewel Streets. My family has lived here since the early 1920s. We've remained in this home. We've been promised sewers for many years, and it's just been kind of a carrot waved and then taken away for various reasons. I would like to stay in my home. I don't think that tying the sewer project to a zoning change is actually fair for the residents. And like others have testified here, I don't think that any new project should be done until the residents here are actually serviced with proper sewers and storm drain connections. Let's see what else I wanted to say. Oh, I asked on multiple occasions about the contaminants found in the ground. And I really like to know, since I live here, I would like someone to answer that question. What is it that was found? They said it wasn't harmful, but I would still like to know. And one more thing I'd like to touch on. When they say fair market value, for those that are interested in a buyout, would the fair market value be based on what the property is right now, or would they take into account what the property will be worth when and if they do zoning changes and with the installation of sewers, because that's drastically going to change the value of the property. And that's pretty much all I have to say. And I do appreciate all the work everyone's been doing in the area. And I've really been at this for a very long time trying to get this done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Acelta. We will now move on to Walter Basdeo, followed by Patricia Castillo, and then Joseph De Jesus. Walter, are you in the room? I'll give a moment. I don't see Walter. Okay, we will now move on to Patricia Castillo. Patricia? Okay. We don't appear to have Patricia in the room. I'm now going to go back to Bart Acklin. Bart, you had signed up for testimony. We weren't able to hear you prior. Bart, if you're in the room, you should be able to unmute yourself and provide testimony. Okay, I think that there's technical difficulties with Bart. Bart, you may provide written testimony up until the end of the comment period. If you'd like to have any comments, that would be recorded. I will now move on to Patricia Castillo is not in the room, right? We'll make a note to go back if necessary. Joseph De Jesus, and then we'll go to Mohammed Doha and then Mohammed Islam. Joseph, are you in the room? If so, you should be able to unmute yourself and begin your testimony. Okay, not hearing or seeing Joseph in the room. Mohammed Doha, followed by Mohammed Islam, and then Rahima Khatun for the next three. Mohammed Doha, are you in the room? We should be able to unmute yourself. Okay. Mohammed Islam, are you in the room? Okay. Rahima Khatun. Not available in the room. Okay. The next group of three were James Manbahal, Jimmy Mora, and Michael Savarese. James Manbahal, if you are in the room, you should be able to unmute yourself. Okay, we will move on to, we will now move on to Jimmy Mora, followed by Michael Savarese. Jimmy, are you in the room? If so, you should be able to unmute yourself and begin your testimony.
Yep, I'm here. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and really thank you to everyone for the work that's been done up till now. It's not to be understated that agencies have been hard at work to reduce flooding. Just imagine 5 years ago when we would have rainstorms, they would basically reach the up to my house. So I'm a resident here on Emerald Street. Been living here for about 20 years. Yeah, so it's great to see this project essentially get to this point. It's not every day that you can organize 50 people to sit here after after work and really get this done. So I think it's a huge testament to collective action and really the idiom that closed mouths don't get fed. Prior to 2022, there wasn't really a lot of community organization, and therefore there wasn't a lot of urgency here. But we know that this work that has been planned for as long as I can remember, is long overdue and is super critical. It's also incredible to see this cross-agency collaboration. We know that a project of this scale requires many stakeholders, and where when the main stakeholders are obviously the residents who live here and who are affected day to day with the current conditions, there's also something to be said about agencies effectively moving forward with this. And yeah, I'd say that this project is incredible to see. Really, it's great that you're shooting for the moon, for the stars and might land amongst the moon, right? It's something that I think many residents here and even at our community meetings, initially, most of the most of the residents were just communicating the need for a sewer, communicating the need for sidewalks, basically bringing something that um, bringing us into the modern conditions. It's something that's very strange to see. Essentially, an extremely underdeveloped area here in New York. We know that land is limited here, and I just like to say that it's really important, as many people have stated, to prioritize infrastructure prior to development. Obviously, if we invest in the infrastructure to you know project the future where things are developed to their full capacity and build for that, then development will come because the amount of land that's available here in New York is just too small for there not to be like a high demand for that. So yeah, I'd just like to say thank you to everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. And I'm really happy to see this moving forward, really happy to see how much effort has been placed into this. And yeah, just let's not stop here and let's continue with what we've been doing and all this great work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mora. We will now move on to Michael Savarese. Apologies for mispronunciation. Michael, if you're in the room, you should be able to unmute yourself. Just for a moment, I will note that we do see Mohammed Islam, as well as Rahima Khatun in the room. So I'm calling on Michael first, but Mohammed Islam and Rahima Khatun, who had signed up to speak, we will be calling on you after that. Michael Savarese, are you in the room? Not here. Okay. We will then move on to Mohammed Islam. Mohammed, if you are in the room and wish to provide testimony, you should be able to unmute yourself. Okay. Mohammed, if you wish to provide testimony, you are not foreclosed on doing so. We cannot hear you right now, but you will be able to provide written testimony by the end of the comment period. There's technical difficulties hearing you now. We are going to move on to Rahima Khatun. Rahima, if you are in the room, please unmute yourself. Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Good evening. Thank you so much for giving me opportunity to talk. I'm the resident from East New York, Dudu Street, and our community lacks of proper routes, sidewalk, and safe crossing, making difficult and dangerous to move around. Especially in the winter and snow and ice, and we have the lot of health condition we living this environment, and also we stay with the community East New York CLT look like almost 4 years, so go to the meeting, everything. I want to strongly support the project because we need it. We should not leave this kind of environment, especially everybody. I think everybody should have the the right what I'm gonna say. Everybody should have the quality life to live, especially in this New York City. I never expected they have this kind of the health environment with this. I'm really request all of them city agency and you guys to please go move on it, but just think about don't do anything look like is and not justice for the residents, and also the any city agency they involve. Thank you so much for all of them. Okay, that's all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Khatun. I see that Bart Acklin is back in the room, who had signed up to speak. So we're going to Bart now. Bart?
Yes, good evening.
Bart, if you could do us a favor and turn off your video.
Bart Acklin, I'm resident on the south side for approximately
Sorry, Bart, could you just turn off your camera because the bandwidth is high?
Hold on.
Your audio is cutting out. Thank you.
I'll try to figure out how to do that. Just give me a second.
Well, we can hear you clearly now, so maybe stay in the location that you're at. Don't move an inch.
Okay.
In your
I'm having problems with connectivity. I'm in Florida right now. All right, so the proposal sounds well and good, but it's gone far beyond the initial problem of flooding and lack of sanitary sewers in the neighborhood. I think this should take precedence over anything else, construction or rezoning, because that continues to be the biggest problem. DEP did a great job. They repaved the streets. They put in catch basins. It definitely alleviated much of the problem. The water that's entering my basement has subsided, not stopped, but less hydrostatic pressure than it was before. And these, I'm not leaking out of my septic tank anymore as of now, but it's still a problem. So before we do anything, I think that should be taken care of first. And I spoke to a lot of people on the south side. We all agree. We'd also like a timeline on like an ETA on a buyout, because I know you guys really can't do anything until you realize which properties are going to be available to you. And we don't want to wait forever. A lot of us are old already. So if that can be done, that would be great as well. And as far as the buyout pricing, I think we should at least get what Department of Finance is charging us taxes on. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you. We are now moving on to Moses Edurad, followed by Ed Hosseinipour, and then Hayung Jong. Moses, are you in the room? If so, you should be able to unmute yourself. Moses is not in the room. Ed, are you in the room? If so, you should be able to unmute yourself. We're checking if Ed is in the room. I don't believe so. So we're going to move on to Hayung Jong, followed by Sarake Dembele, and then Ed Brown.
Hello?
Hayung Jong, yes, you may
Yes.
start.
Hi, my name is Hyung Jung. I'm a member of East New York CLT. I'm here to raise concerns about Task 20 of the EIS scope, the disadvantaged community analysis. The disadvantaged community analysis map labels Jewel Street as having comparatively lower burdens and vulnerabilities. According to the draft of EIS, this tool determines whether the neighborhood plan would cause disproportionate pollution burdens on disadvantaged communities. Because Jewel Street isn't classified as a disadvantaged community on the assessment tool, I'm concerned the analysis won't adequately evaluate environmental injustice burdens this community already faces. The tool uses 45 indicators, including flooding, and asthma. Jewel Street residents suffer from both, not because of any new plan, but because of decades of infrastructure failure. The EIS asks whether this plan will cause or increase pollution burdens, but that's the wrong question. The right question is, how will the city fix pre-existing problems caused by the city before implementing any new plan? The Mayor's Office of Climate and Environmental Justice has already acknowledged that Jewel Street neighborhood is vulnerable to climate change. The city should evaluate pollution burdens regardless of whether this neighborhood is classified as disadvantaged communities. This entire neighborhood plan happened because Jewel Street residents, East New York CLT, and CHLDC brought attention to the city's infrastructure failure. The EIS must analyze not just how the plan might create new burdens, but how the city created existing environmental injustice. Lastly, I urge the city to go beyond existing tools to address the environmental injustice by studying successful programs from other states. In Valmeyer, Illinois, after the 1993 flood submerged the entire town, the government funded the relocation of 900 residents to higher ground within 2 years. Residents pooled their buyout money to purchase new land together, keeping the community intact while completely eliminating flood risk. More recently, in 2012, HPD allowed residents living in a building under tenant interim lease program at 9 2nd Avenue in the East Village to relocate to a new building on the site and work with developers to allow tenants to purchase a new unit for $10 each. Similarly, HPD has also helped tenants displaced from the Seward Park urban renewal to relocate to a new housing development on the site. This demonstrates that the city has the capacity to create new solutions, and I urge city to do so. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Ms. Jong. We will now move on to Sarake Dembele, followed by Ed Brown, and then Abdul Sattar. Sarake,
Hello.
hi. Yes, you
Good
may
evening.
your testimony. Thank you.
Perfect. Good evening. My name is Sarake Zembele, and I am a fellow at Cypress Hills LDC and have been working along with residents for the past few months on advocating on how this development should serve them and provide a quality of life after all these years of neglect. While infrastructure investment is long overdue in this neighborhood, the way the sewer and drainage system is proposed will cause displacement both directly and indirectly, and in the scope of work, there's no accurate or account for how residents actually live in their homes today. First, the most immediate impact is the proposed street elevation, particularly in South Jewel Street, where the streets may be raised up to 10 feet. And for residents, this is not an abstract design intervention. Raising the streets by this magnitude compromises their first floors, and these are not unused spaces. They're spaces where people live, store belongings, and gather. So losing access to those spaces means losing livable square footage, privacy, safety, and dignity. When your first floor is suddenly below grade, dark, damp, and harder to access, or requires stairs or ramps that were never part of their daily lives, the home becomes uncomfortable and, in some cases, uninhabitable. And people may not be formally evicted, but they are pushed to leave because the conditions are no longer supportive of basic living. The plan includes property acquisition in both the north and south side of Jewel Street to facilitate drainage infrastructure and the resilient acquisition pilot. And while it's framed as voluntary, these acquisitions create pressure on residents that have been paying for all the storm flooding damages to their homes, as the retrofit may not be reasonable or functional option to them. When homes are acquired, residents are displaced regardless of whether the program is labeled supportive, and the scope does not clearly state how residents will be protected, rehoused nearby, or allowed to remain in the community. The plan openly states that the new sewer infrastructure is intended to unlock new residential development and rezoning, and historically, we've seen how there have been rising land values, speculative pressures, and rent increases, and without enforceable anti-displacement measures tied to the existing residents of the Jewel Street, this investment risks benefiting the future while pushing out people who endured decades of flooding, neglect, and environmental harm. So, while the scope repeatedly refers to community engagement, there seems to be like a void or a gap when it comes to the lived experiences and voices, and displacement is not physical. Years of uncertainty, fear, and the acquisition, changing the street level, erodes the residents' sense of belonging. The ask is to collect more qualitative data from the current Jewel Street tenants, and with that, cultivate a tangible anti-displacement protection strategy. And if this project moves forward without concrete resident protection, then displacement is not unintended consequence, it's an expected outcome. Thank you for this opportunity to testify.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to Ed Brown, followed by Abdul Sattar, and then Jack Cass. Ed Brown, if you are in the room, you should be able to unmute yourself.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. You may start.
Good evening, all. I'm here to support the project 100%, but I'm also here to advocate for local hiring and minority contracting opportunities. I'm also experienced with working with Mr. Kimia, Daniel Kimia from Big Apple Developers in the past, and he's gone above and beyond to meet the goals in reference to local hiring and minority contracting opportunities. As long as developers are willing to actually meet set goals, we come in and we help them find qualified people in the neighborhood and qualified contractors throughout the city to work on these projects. We believe that you can't just develop infrastructure without developing the people. And one way to develop the people is helping them economically. So with that, I'm looking forward to this project and working directly with Mr. Kimia and other community stakeholders on the Jewel Street development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Brown. We will now move on to Abdul Sattar, followed by Jack Cass, and then Anika Arna. And before we look for Abdul, I will just note to everybody, we are coming up on the end of the speakers that have signed up. So if you are in the room and wish to speak, have not done so already, now would be the time to access the chat in the Zoom and sign up so that we may call your name. Abdul Sattar is not in the room. We will now move on to Jack Cass. Jack, are you in the room? Okay, we don't have Jack. Anika Arna, followed by Jeremy Cousin, and then Jay Goldstein. Anika, are you in the room? If so, you should be able to unmute.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. You may begin your testimony.
Hi, I wanted to talk about the serious and ongoing issues in our community, especially concerning the infrastructure. Recently, it's been discussed many times actually, and it's been raised, awareness many times, and it's still unsolved. And it's not just minor inconveniences, it's things that's affecting people's safety and health and their day-to-day lives. The first issue is like access and mobility. There's a lack of proper roads and sidewalks and safe street crossings, and even getting around, this is extremely difficult. People are struggling to cross the street safely, and this is more dangerous even in colder weather, especially now since we have snow and ice. And when you have poor drainage on top of that, even surfaces that may be easy to walk on a regular day to day, it's nearly impassable. And this puts, people like pedestrians and families, even elderly residents and people that have mobility issues, they're at a constant challenge, and this should not be a risk for anyone. Even more concerning is the absence of like a centralized sewer system. This current situation should not be happening at all. It's unreasonable and it places an unreasonable burden on residents, and it does not function safely or effectively. When it rains or it floods, or even when it snows, the sewer water rises into the streets, and this is completely unsanitary and absolutely hazardous, and it should not be happening. And it poses a serious public safety risk where it's affecting people's health due to the exposure of sewage. And even personally, my brother is sick right now, and a lot of it has to do with the quality of life. And it creates such a strong and ongoing odor that impacts every day. And when you have this type of environmental damage, it goes off and it's uncontrolled wastewater, and it goes into even the nature and even the plants that we have around the streets. And during rainfall and flooding, it gets significantly more worse. And these concerns have been brought about like many times before in other meetings and discussions. However, there hasn't been like a reasonable action plan where people are held accountable. There's a lack of timeline, and there's a lack of accountability and follow through, where even if it's been discussed many times, there's no action that's been taken place, which is a little infuriating. Immediate steps need to be taken before situations get worse and the quality of life decreases even more.
Is that the end of your testimony, Azarna?
Yes.
Thank you very much for providing it. We will move on to Jeremy Cousin, followed by Jay Goldstein, and then Gail Bartholomew. Jeremy, you should be able to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me?
Yes, you may begin.
Good evening. My name is Jeremy Kozin, and I'm a land use attorney at Fried Frank Harris Shriver Jacobson, counsel to 2832 Linden Boulevard Realty LLC, the owner of 2832 Linden Boulevard, a site that occupies the entire block bound by Linden Boulevard, Emerald Street, Loring Avenue, and Ruby Street. Our client's site is located in a low-density R4 zoning district and is surrounded on all sides by the proposed rezoning that is the subject of this hearing, or areas recently rezoned to encourage additional residential density and a mix of uses. We strongly support HPD's goal of reducing flooding, investing in infrastructure, increasing the supply of affordable, resilient housing, and encouraging economic development in the Jewel Streets neighborhood and surrounding area. We are providing testimony today to request that the lead agency study the potential rezoning of 2832 Linden Boulevard in the final scope of work and DEIS, as it will meet these goals, specifically with regards to increasing the supply of housing and affordable housing in this neighborhood. This site was part of prior planning efforts dating back to 2022 and 2023 and was identified in planning documents as a site with an active mixed-use corridor that would encourage new housing development, encourage retail and amenities, and improve public spaces. In October 2025, HPD's final Jewel Streets neighborhood plan, however, did not include this site in the contemplated rezoning. Consistent with the goals of the plan, we believe that the site should be rezoned from a low-density R4 residential zoning district to zoning districts that permit a mix of uses along Linden Boulevard and enable the development of significant new housing, including affordable housing at the site. We propose that the lead agency add this site to as a projected development site and rezone the site to a C4 5D zoning district within 100 feet of Linden Boulevard, an R7A district within 100 feet of Loring Avenue, and an R6A district in the remaining mid-block portion. As is set forth further in a written comment letter that we will submit, inclusion of the site in this rezoning would be appropriate based on its wide street frontage, location along Linden Boulevard, and its consistency with the existing built context, currently active private rezoning applications for nearby blocks, and the proposed zoning for the surrounding area. If the site is rezoned, a significant amount of new housing, including affordable housing, could be developed, in addition to commercial uses along Linden Boulevard and a community facility that would support the needs of the local community. Thank you for the opportunity to testify regarding this important zoning initiative.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kozin. We will now move on to Jay Goldstein, followed by Gail Bartholomew, and then Phyllis Insarillo. Jay? Is Mr. Goldstein in the room? Okay, we are going to move on. Gail Bartholomew, followed by Phyllis Insarillo. Gail?
Yes.
Yes,
Pleasant good evening, all. My name is Gail Bartholomew. I've been a volunteer with the East New York CLT for the past 3 years on this project, and thank you all for having me. The foundation, which was already stated by the East New York CLT for this project, is a foundation started with for the flooding and the sewer line. Tonight, I'm here to read a statement from a community resident, Aaliyah Bartholomew, who is a college student and cannot be here today. And I begin, to whom may concern. The Jewel Street Initiative is a violent effort to uplift and develop an area in dire need. With my background in biology, scientific research, sports and health and well-being, I always encourage holistic well-being to be included in any development and city planning initiative. A community health is its wealth. As a track and field athlete, I would like to see consideration to be made for the addition of tough grass and or synthetic track in some of the green spaces for running and free movement activities. Linden Park has the only synthetic track and football soccer turf in the area, and it gets extremely crowded. I would also like to see the inclusion of running trails, of the integration of the open field spaces if possible. Additionally, the inclusion of plant-based eateries and restaurant health businesses establishment and inclusive recreational resources would enrich the area and bring new life to the community by helping alleviate the current food desert in the area and bring local recreation to the community. A local community center with pool, gymnasium, weight room, cardio, running tracks, synthetic graph stuff, multiple purpose space room, dance studios, table tennis, etc., can be a great way to serve the community recreation and health needs. Safety is also another concern while using this facility. Safety of patrons and all avenue from front desk security to bathroom location must be taken into consideration. Thank you for your consideration and understanding. Aaliyah Bartholomew.
Thank you very much, and you may submit any additional testimony in writing. We will now move on to Phyllis, and then I will call any speakers who we did not get to hear from that have signed up again one last time. Phyllis, you should be able to unmute yourself and begin your testimony.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Phyllis Cirillo, and I am co-president of the Howard Beach Lindenwood Civic, representing over 28,000 residents living here in Howard Beach. I have watched the Jewel Street plan go from giving residents much-needed infrastructure improvements that they should not have had to beg the city for, to a plan that puts their needs at the bottom of the priority list. The people living in the area asked for streets and sewers. Why is that coming along with the caveat of zoning changes and a mini city being built in their neighborhood? Why isn't the infrastructure being put in place so that we can see the results of the work before a zoning change is being requested? Residents of the area attended our November 25th civic meeting and approached me after the meeting asking that very question. Why is the city asking for a blanket zoning change for both the Brooklyn and Queens side together rather than it being done in each community board as is customary? We are two different communities with different needs. Our local public school, PS 232, is already severely overcrowded. Our police force is depleted due to resignations and a huge reduction in those seeking to become police officers because of poor treatment and policies. The FDNY is severely understaffed. Why is there no mention of any public safety elements or a new school for people in this area when you are already projecting over 5,000 units of housing? That means tens of thousands of new residents. Why is all of this effort into building housing being amplified and prioritized when we here in Howard Beach are still suffering due to flooding and infrastructure issues? HPD, which stands for Housing Preservation and Development, has forgotten about the P in their name, which stands for preservation, and is only concerned about development. We ask that HPD focus on the real needs of the community, which is raising the streets and putting in a sewer system and looking into ways to help the people of the Jewel Streets as well as Hamilton and Howard Beach. Stop prioritizing politics, developers, and start prioritizing the people of this city. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Cirillo. I'm going to, as we've exhausted the list of speakers who have signed up, call in for one last time the speakers who we did not get to hear from that had signed up. Babar Buddha, are you in the room? Babar is not in the room. Okay. Patricia Castillo. Joseph De Jesus. Mohammed Doha. Mohammed Islam.
Yes, I am
Mohammed
here.
Doha. Yes, you
Yes,
may
I'm
begin
here.
your testimony.
Can I have like 2 more minutes to?
No, Mr. Doha, we have
Okay.
called you a few
Sorry,
times.
I caught up on something. Okay.
Would you like to provide your testimony now, or? Okay, we will note. Okay. Rahima Khatun spoke. James Manbahal. James, are you in the room? Michael Savarizi. Moses Edurad. Ed Hosseinipour. Abdul Sattar. Jack Cass. And Jay Goldstein. Mr. Doha, we have now, if you are ready to provide your testimony, we have exhausted the list. So if you're ready.
Okay. So this is Mohammed Doha. I live in 7505 Blake Avenue. So since we have started this program with East New York CLT and also New York City Housing Preservation and other city agencies came many times. And then, we had many meetings and we really wanted to see the improvement of the flooding issue, the quality of the soil, the rezoning, and then the school capacity and the retrofit of our houses. We also want to know when they are going to pave the roads and put the sewerage system, and what would be the capacity of the school the hospitals or park, things are like that.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Doha. Is that the end of your testimony?
That's about it, yes.
Okay. I believe Mohammed Islam is also in a room, and that would be the last speaker. Mohammed, if you could unmute yourself. Give it a moment. All right, we have some technical issues with Mr. Islam. Anybody who has not been able to speak, note that your opportunity to provide comment has not ended. You have until January 30th, 2026, which is another more than a month to provide written comments on the draft scope of work, which will be recorded and given the same consideration as any comments that were received in the testimony today. Get to the next slide, please. That is a timer reset. Just get to advance the slide. I believe
some technical issues on our side to get to the last one.
It's okay. While you resolve those, Paula, if you need to take off the screen while you resolve it, I can give some announcements. First of all, I want to thank everybody for taking the opportunity to come to this meeting. It was a very well-attended meeting with a lot of stakeholders, a lot of opinions, and it shows how much the community, you all care for spending time and taking time out of your busy lives to come to an evening meeting during a busy season, and we know it's a busy time of year. We really sincerely appreciate everyone who has taken the time to provide testimony today. On this screen, you can see the deadline to provide written comments on the draft scope of work. You will also see the email address that you can submit comments to, as well as the mailing address if you prefer to send something in writing. You can stay in touch with the project by following the Jewel Streets Neighborhood Plan webpage. The link of which is on the screen here and will also be shared in the chat. You can also email jewelstreetsplan@hpd.nyc.gov to provide any additional feedback through that avenue. Again, reminder, the end of the public scope comment period is January 30th, 2026, and you may submit comments to the addresses on the screen. The time is now 7:04 p.m. and this scoping meeting is now closed. Thank you very much.